So far in the book of Proverbs, the father has been very concerned about the son staying on the straight path, choosing the best path, avoiding evil at all costs, recognizing that even though life is complex, the choice between good and evil is maybe not as complex as it seems. But it does seem that the father is very aware of the allure of evil, the temptation of wickedness. He knows just how hard it will be for the son to choose what is good when he's facing all that the world has to offer. And so it seems in this lesson, what the father is concerned about is helping the son choose to walk straight. That's what I think we could call the title of this lesson number 7 here, Walking Straight. In order for the father to accomplish this, he introduces some interesting characters here. So far, we've encountered characters like the righteous or the wicked. We've encountered Lady Wisdom. We've encountered the community. But here, it's a different type of character. The characters that we meet in this lecture are the parts of your own body. What the father seems to do in this lecture, in this lesson, is try to help the sons realize just the ways that their body parts can help or harm their journey on walking straight. And so let's jump into this lesson here. He says, "My son, pay attention to my words. Listen closely to my sayings." That's verse 20. He's telling his son that what he's about to tell him, he really needs to listen to or give attention to. Again, this is something that the father has said multiple times before. But what's interesting is he begins to talk about this. Pay attention to my words, tune your ear to my sayings. That might get obscured a bit in our translation, but really what he says is stretch out or extend your ear, that you might be able to hear. This is just the first of several different body parts that occur throughout this whole section. And what the father is doing is preparing the son for avoiding the way of evil. And so he says, verse 21, don't lose sight of them. Don't let them escape from your eyes. Instead, keep them within your heart. Now, this is the third body part mentioned, right? So far we've got ears and we've got eyes, and now we have the heart. And all of this is helping the son to stay on the straight path. Now, for us, the heart is the center of feeling. In fact, if we want to talk about us being captivated by something, we will generally use language of the heart to talk about it. Boy, that really touched my heart, or that pulled at my heartstrings, or man, I did that with all of my heart. It means that we did it with feeling, or we did it with emotion, or somehow something deep within us resonated with this thing that we engaged in. This is not the way that the Hebrews thought about the word for heart. In fact, the heart in the Hebrew mind seems to be the place where you make decisions. It's the place where you process information. It's the place where you go about deciding what is good and what is bad. It was not the center of feeling. It was rather the center of thinking. There is no word for mind in Hebrew. If we were going to come up with a word for mind, the closest we would be able to get is this word lev, which is heart. In other words, you think with your heart. You feel, in biblical Hebrew, it seems, with your kidneys. If we're going to talk about feeling, ways that we have compassion or something like that, or grief, intense grief, perhaps we're going to talk about the kidneys and how the kidneys are involved in that. That's not something we do in English, really, but this is the way that you typically talk about it in Hebrew. And so, because of that, what this means is when we encounter this word heart, we have to do a little bit of translation work, even in our own minds. This is the way that language works. No language is exactly the same as another language. There's lots of ways to say something. There's lots of ways to phrase things. And also words have different meanings in different languages. It's often something that we could just assume that our English translations that we're reading are really just kind of word-for-word translations of what it says in the Hebrew. But even if we get a nice word-for-word translation, the Hebrew word is not always the same as the English word. In other words, the range of meaning for a Hebrew word is not always the same range of meaning for an English word. One example I like to use frequently to sort of point out the details of this is the Hebrew word that we often translate as bread. The Hebrew word for that is lechem. And the word lechem can refer to bread. It can refer to some sort of flat bread or something. It can refer to a cake. But it can also refer to things that perhaps would be more on the periphery. It seems at times that the word can really just refer to something that is basic sustenance in life. And in at least one occasion, it seems like the word refers to even milk. It's a way of just saying this is sort of a basic sustenance in life. Now, if we take the English word bread, that means certain things. What exactly constitutes bread? Is a loaf of bread, is that bread? I think so. Is a bagel bread? Yeah, I think so. Is a croissant bread? Probably. How about a cracker? Right? So all of these different elements we think are, well, this is probably more true to the word bread, but some of these things are more on the periphery. The real challenge then is trying to figure out how much do these two circles overlap, right? So if this is everything that the Hebrew word lechem means, and this is everything that the English word bread means, how much do these two circles overlap? I think the same thing could be said for this word here. The word for heart in Hebrew that we use, lev, it means all sorts of different things, but it's not actually the same thing that we mean in English when we use the word heart. So we have to do a bit of translation in our mind as we encounter verses like this that tell us something we should do about our heart, and we try to begin to process, what does this actually tell me to do? What is this suggesting that I should be about? So we're going to keep these things within our hearts, it says. Now, we're going to encounter a passage just a few chapters later here in the book of Proverbs where we're going to meet an individual, a youth who is weak of heart. And I don't think that means that he's perhaps just a lover, right? That he has a weak heart, that maybe he's doesn't have a strong constitution or something like that. I think what it means is he's lacking in sense. He doesn't quite have the processing capability that he needs to have in order to be able to encounter life. I think we see this play out in the book of Samuel. There we meet an individual by the name of Nabal. It's kind of a funny story as David tries to get some money from Nabal, and Nabal refuses. Nabal, his name means fool in Hebrew, and the whole story really is about how he acts foolishly, how he does things that align with the path of the wicked, I think the father would say in the book of Proverbs. And in the end of the story, even though David's offended, he takes offense at what Nabal says to him, and so he comes to kill him. But David's wife, or Nabal's wife, Abigail, comes and sort of puts a stop to it. She intervenes, intercedes, and David listens to her voice. But it does tell us at the end of that story that Abigail, once this party was over where Nabal almost died, she comes and she tells Nabal sort of everything that had happened, the way she had intervened. And it says when she spoke these words, Nabal's heart died within him and he became as stone. The Hebrew word there is heart, and his heart died. When that happened, Nabal just was like a corpse, and yet he was still breathing, it seems. And then the text says about 10 days later, the Lord struck him and he died. Now, in English, if someone's heart dies within them, they die, clinically dead, right? If you have a heart attack and your heart stops, you can live no longer. But that's not what happens to Nabal, right? It actually wasn't this organ that stopped, that was within his body, right? It wasn't his interior heart that died, but rather it seems it was the place where he thought That's what stopped. I think if we were to attach a medical label to that, we could perhaps call it a stroke. Nabal had something happen to him where he was no longer able to process information or think, and he became like stone. And after 10 days like that, then the Lord struck him and he died. So there's just a different way of thinking about this concept of heart. That, I think, is what we need to bring into this. We are supposed to keep these instructions. We keep these words, these commands deep within our heart. Now, verse 22, for they are life to those who find them and health to one's whole body. These words, again, are life. Even more, they bring healing to your flesh. So it's not just a simple, this will be generally good for you. They actually are life to those who find them. They heal your body. They heal your flesh if you will choose to take them in. And so the Father's concern here is to use your body to your advantage. Use your body to help you walk straight. And so now we begin the heart of the teaching here. Pun intended, I suppose. Verse 23, guard your heart, it says, above all else, for it is the source of life. A very popular verse in Proverbs here. But what does this mean? Well, we've just talked about heart as the place of thinking, the place of conceptual reasoning. And so what is the Father sort of suggesting here that we should do? Well, here's what I don't think the Father is saying. I don't think the Father is saying, guard your emotions. Make sure that you protect your emotions and don't let yourself be too emotionally invested in something or to give yourself over too quickly emotionally to something else. You need to make sure that you're guarding your heart or your feeling from everything else. I don't think that's what he means. But rather, I think what he's saying is you guard your heart, your center of thinking and processing information, as one would station a guard outside of a jail cell. This same word for guard here is used in the Joseph story. It actually says rather woodenly in Hebrew in verse 23, more than any other custody, your heart, right? So we're doing something. We're guarding our heart like the guards guarded Joseph in the Genesis story, or like the guards guarded Jerusalem later in the story of Nehemiah, right? We're stationing guards. What's the role of a guard who is guarding something? It's to protect. Now, there's some question. What exactly are we protecting? Are we protecting someone from coming in, or are we protecting something from getting out? It seems in the Joseph story, the guards who are stationed there to guard Joseph are perhaps protecting people from being able to get in, to get access to him. And maybe in some sense, they're keeping Joseph from being able to get out. In the story in Nehemiah, surely the guards are protecting the city from other things being able to get in. Regardless, it seems like the word guard doesn't necessarily tell us for sure which way we're protecting. Is it things coming in or is it things going out? But rather just this idea of protection. Station a guard. And that's what it seems to be saying here. Guard. Put something there to protect your heart. And here, I think then, your center of processing. Keep this keep this protected at all times. I wonder, in light of verse 24, if really we need to think about this as things that are leaving, regarding output. Why do we need to guard the heart? Well, because it is the source of life. Here, the idea is the outgoings of life that come out, that emerge from us. One Hebrew lexicon says source. It is the source of life. It's the way that it's the place from which everything else flows. And so I think what the Father, sort of backing up here then and thinking about this whole verse, I think what the Father is telling the Son to do, what he's advising to his children, is to make sure that they are protecting or they're stationing a guard around their thoughts and their reasoning. Make sure that you protect all of that and you protect what comes in. I think that's probably a reasonable decision regarding the things that are coming in. We're watching what input we receive, right? Who are we hanging around? What kind of influences are we allowing to have say into our minds? But also regarding what comes out. We're making sure that we're taking care of how our words emerge, how our thoughts emerge as they express themselves in real life. All of life flows from our center of thinking and processing information. All of the words we speak usually run through our minds first. And so I think what the Father is suggesting here is that we need to be careful about what emerges, right? Notice it's less of do right and wrong, or do right and avoid wrong, right? Instead, it's watch or guard your input and output. It starts at the source. You take care of this. You take care of guarding your center of decision making. And you've already found yourself ahead of the game when it comes to making the right decision. So, what does this look like as it's fleshed out in life? It means that we don't let our mouth speak dishonestly. We often talk ourselves into trouble, and I think the advice here is to be careful against that. Don't let your lips talk deviously. Avoid crookedness or deception. Some have said speaking out of both sides of your mouth. Make sure that you're protecting yourself and not speaking in ways that are false. Again, allow your body to be the character that helps guide you on the right way. Let your eyes look forward and fix your gaze straight ahead. 2 admonitions here to make sure that we're looking straight. We're not even glancing from one side to the other. Carefully consider the path for your feet, and all your ways will be established. Remember, your life path is paved as you go. So Michael Fox reminds us. So you do this, and it will be a good path. All of your ways will be established. And so then the summary in verse 27. Don't turn to the right or to the left. Keep your feet away from evil. You avoid both the left and the right. You make sure that you are staying on the straight path. You don't turn to the left. You don't turn to the right. You just walk straight. You keep going straight. Fox reminds us, it's not that wisdom is a mediating way. No, the path of wisdom is extreme. It's the opposing pole to folly. And so, for us, all of this is just a choice between choosing what is good and choosing against evil. All of your body may entice you. In fact, if we look back through this text here, this lesson that the Father gives us, we find seven different body parts that are mentioned. And all of these different body parts can either work against us and leading us down the path of evil, right? We can close our ears to the instruction of the Father. We can close our eyes to the good path. We can use our eyes to turn to another way. We can use our mouth for evil. We can allow our heart to be distracted or to go in a way that is not good. We can let our feet step onto the wrong path. All of these different parts of our body, right? We could use in negative ways. But the Father is encouraging us here to use every resource we have, all of the different pieces of our body that God has given us, to fight to stay on the straight path. Again, the Father is not suggesting for us that we should veer off this way or that we should veer off this way, but rather the admonition is to just walk straight. Make sure that as you're walking, you stay on the straight path. This, the Father insists, is the way to life. And so, even though we might encounter all sorts of obstacles along the way, even though the wicked may entice us to come and join with them, even though at times it will seem as if our own body is in rebellion against us, do everything within your power to walk the straight path. If you do, you will find that you're walking the path of life.